We remember the life of legendary San Diego native, college and NBA superstar and broadcaster Bill Walton to Open Press Row. Major League Baseball integrates Negro League Baseball stats into the system, and that does shuffle up the order when it does come to baseball stats. The PWHL wraps up a tremendous inaugural season. What's on the to-do list in critical form in Season 2? The Olympic Boxing Committee here's talk about the IBA perhaps giving financial incentives to gold medal winners of the upcoming Paris Olympics. And the ACC is still stuck in hot water with a lawsuit involving Florida State University. That, plus a preview of episode 1 of Puck and Roll covering the new San Diego Elite Draft League, comes your way right here and right now. This Coast to Coast Entertainment Network program is brought to you by Beside Me Bracelets. Our bracelets are handmade for any occasion. Use the promo code Coast to Coast for 15% off. Visit their website at besideme.com. Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry. With 24-hour shopping available, use the code 160920 and show her some love, like she showed us. Reaper Apparel Company, a commitment to live your most authentic way every single day. Visit reaperapparelco.com for more information and a look at all of their apparel offerings. And by Good Day Embroidery, your local source for custom embroidery, screen printing, and more. Log on to gooddayembroidery.com for more information. Happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome into the final press row for the month of May on this Thursday afternoon, May 30th, 2024. Yours truly, Callan McClurg, back with you here after a week off last week for the end of the college baseball season here in sunny San Diego, California, as mentioned on this Thursday afternoon, May 30th, 2024. We are back, folks, on Press Row, covering, of course, all the big news and sports stories from the angle of sports media and sports business, courtesy of our great correspondents and our great sources over at both awfulannouncing.com and frontofficesports.com as well. Hoping you and yours are having a tremendous start to your Thursday and hoping that everything is going according to plan here today. With that, folks, in mind, a quick clarification or quick heads up, I should say, for you folks here this past Saturday, May 25th, we again had the tryouts for our Elite Draft League here in San Diego. Again, as you probably heard, Puck and Roll will be the podcast officially covering the EDL here in San Diego. We did, by the way, pre-record a 10-minute interview roughly with our league commissioner and president and substitute player Josh Fontaine on Saturday following tryouts. That, folks, will air in its entirety on Friday in the afternoon here via Coast to Coast Entertainment, and also will be shared via the Callan McClurg Mixcloud account as well. So we'll have more about that later in the show. But of course, folks, we invite you as always to give us your input, as we always do appreciate here, of course, on C2C. Again, your questions, your commentary, live and in full here throughout the course of our show on anything that we talk about here, questions, comments, concerns. We, of course, greatly appreciate it. And also, folks, real quick as well, want to again say thank you to all of our viewers out here who have watched us either live every Thursday in the afternoon, or if you have watched us on replay as well. Crunching some numbers a little bit here before we came on the air. Press Row is only about 130 views away right now from 2,000. And this is our 28th show that we have done here on Coast to Coast. So a major thank you to our viewers and to our team here at C2C for, again, giving me the chance to come here and bring something new to the table here on C2C. But more so, a major thank you again to all of our viewers, though, who have made Press Row this successful about really only 30 shows in. This is our 28th time coming here to talk about all these media and business perspective stories here. And again, we're roughly about 130, 132 views away right now from 2,000 already. So again, thank you all so much for your patronage and for joining us here on Press Row, and also joining us as well on C2C, or if you're also joining us on the Callan Sports Twitch channel as well. With that, folks, in mind, let's talk about the big topics of the day. But of course, folks, we have to start off, though, in a very somber note, though, about the passing of the man himself, Big Red Bill Walton, the basketball legend who led the Bruins at UCLA to 2 national titles and 2 NBA titles in Portland and Boston. Sadly, passed away earlier this week at the age of 71 right here in San Diego, California. Bill was the league's MVP of the 77-78 season and a member of the NBA's 50th and 75th anniversary teams, a 2-time champion, too, at UCLA, and a 3-time National Player of the Year under legendary Bruins head coach, the man himself, John Wooden. Bill was also enshrined in the Basketball Hall of Fame in 1993, but of course is best known for chronic foot injuries that disrupted his NBA career, which lasted only 468 games with the Portland Trail Blazers, his hometown San Diego, then the LA Clippers, and the Boston Celtics. But he's best known, though, for the 73 title game against Memphis State, where he shot an incredible 21 of 22 from the field and led the Bruins to the national championship that season. Bill turned away and retired from playing the game and turned to broadcasting, a career he never thought he'd be good at because he had a stuttering impediment during his time growing up. But he was also an Emmy Award winner and named one of the top 50 broadcasters in sports of all time by the American Sportscasters Association back in 2009. Best known, of course, for his on-air tangents, often appearing on air in Grateful Dead band T-shirts. In his final years, Bill spoke out, though, as well about issues here that mattered most to him, including the problem of homelessness right here in his native hometown of San Diego, California. Folks, I can just say this right here and right now, that the last 10 years in this town have been dark. You think back in perspective in 2014, around the new year, we lost Jerry Coleman, great baseball player, war veteran, war hero in his own right, and longtime Padre broadcaster. Jerry passed away from injury suffered at a fall at his home in La Jolla, or here in San Diego, up in the North County. Then you fast forward to June of 2014. Tony Gwynn Sr. passed away after his battle with cancer. Then you further go down the pipe, like the pipeline here. And this past year, Peter Seidler, Padres owner, passed. Now, though, here in May of 2024, San Diego has to endure losing Bill Walton, who, much like me, I would say, and I know it's a very fair or unfair comparison, but certainly somebody who never forgot where he came from and somebody who really wanted to make sure that his hometown got the love and respect it deserved on a national stage. And I think it was more about when Bill was already really did a number and did a phenomenal job here in San Diego County. Challenged Athlete Foundation, which was a huge thing here for Bill in San Diego to help out, challenged athletes, again, riding his bike to and from wherever he would go. And just how Bill Walton thoroughly enjoyed bringing up San Diego. About maybe I'd say, and I might be wrong here, but maybe about 5 to 7 years ago, San Diego hosted the Bill Walton basketball. He had a college game played at Petco Park here in San Diego. It was a week-long ordeal of celebrating basketball. They brought numerous high schools in from out of the city, out of the state, out of the country for that matter, and they played multiple games a day throughout this week, and it led up to San Diego State playing the University of San Diego on a basketball court laid across the infield dirt at Petco Park. And Bill was at every single game, made numerous, TV appearances, and I actually flagged Bill down when he was on his way down the tunnel from the Padre dugout And I stopped him and he signed my game ticket and things like that. But again, I was not, though, sadly alive when Bill played. But having heard stories from my family who saw Bill play with the San Diego Clippers when he was healthy, but also about learning about the John Wooden UCLA Bruins, Lou Alcindor, better known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Bill Walton, that was like, I would think, the first major college basketball dynasty. The UConn women come to mind, but I think everyone out there, young or old, knows about the UCLA Wooden-led Bruins. But then, though, the injuries took the toll, though, on Bill, though, as his time went on with Portland, got that title in '77, his time in San Diego. And believe it or not, folks, this is a very interesting sidebar here. But Bill Walton actually, 1 year recently, like very, very recently, did a sit-down interview with, I believe, either Bally Sports San Diego or even the San Diego Union Tribune. Bill actually blamed himself for the Clippers not working in town here in San Diego. As you may have known, this was also an NBA market that hosted the Rockets for about 5 years in the late 60s into the early 70s. But Bill felt like it was his doing. Like, forget Donald Sterling moving the team. Me coming home, me having my bad foot and my back problem. And and he said, this is on me for this team leaving. And I really thought it was unfair for Bill to say that about himself because, like, it wasn't your fault that this team never drew. Look at the owners, look at the guys around you, and the fact that in the stands, if it was not Clippers, Lakers, Clippers, Celtics, Clippers, Sixers, nobody cared to come see the Suns or the Warriors or the Cavaliers or Detroit back in those days here in town. But I also think I admire Bill Walton, though, mainly for how he retired, but then he was kind of approached about broadcasting. But Bill, having his lifelong speech issue, he's like, I don't think I'm cut out for this, though. Yet, though, he probably became everybody's favorite broadcaster. Whether you loved him for how he would talk about the game, or if you hated him for his Grateful Dead t-shirts or his tangents about just weird things about life and sports and being proud of his hometown. I know there's a mixed bag of like good, bad, and ugly stories about Bill Walton as a broadcaster. But for somebody, though, who literally said, I have this speech impediment, I don't think I'm cut out for this line of work. Yet, though, Bill Walton is named top 50 by the American Sportscasters Association as one of the 50 greatest of all time in 2009. And I think Bill might even be in the Hall of Fame as both the player and a broadcaster. Like, that does not happen very often where people, unlike maybe Jerry Coleman, Ford C. Frick Award winner and also player, where not a lot of guys who transition or people who transition into broadcasting don't really succeed in that field. Bill Walton did that. Jerry Coleman did that, for example, on the baseball side. Other people, also had done that as well. But folks, from a city perspective, though, when that news came down here, it was a very shocking story that a lot of us didn't know that Bill was sick with cancer. It was a very private ordeal that was, held privately. But then from the broader picture, and I think my guy David Furker, who's in the Twitch chat, would agree, that this has been a very difficult decade, though, in this town, losing people like Jerry Coleman, losing the greatest hitter in Padre history, and for that matter, maybe one of the best of all time in Tony Gwynn Sr. Then we lose Peter Seidler earlier this year, and then we also lose Bill Walton here. 4 people within a very lengthy decade. And then on top of that, too, you go even further back to 2012 when you're talking about San Diego losing Junior Seau. That's 5 or 6 people who really, I think, have helped put this city of San Diego, California on the map when it boils down to national exposure. And there's no arguing, folks. It's very hard to even try to find somebody better than Bill Walton in San Diego high school basketball on the boys and men's side. Women's side, we've had Candace Wiggins. We've had Cappie Pondexter. We've had Dejanay Carrington and Kelsey Plum, to name 4 players off the bat on the girls and women's side here locally in San Diego. But it's very hard, I think, to find somebody on the men or boys side even surpass what Bill did at Helix High. But it's a huge loss, though, for the basketball community. It is a major loss for the city of San Diego, mainly for the fact of what Bill did, though, after his playing days, when he was retired, when he was still doing games for the Pac-12 network or on ESPN with Dave Fash, is that Bill was arguably the nicest human being you would have met. I mean, you could, say, "Hey, can I get a picture?" And Bill would give you like a 15-minute, like response about why you should, like, "Yes, I can." But then he'll give you a bunch of other, like off the wall stuff. But try and find me a person, though, more giving of their time in this day and age where athletes don't really connect with their fans like they used to. I always love telling the story about when I met Tony Gwynn as a kid at Qualcomm Stadium on Kids Photo Day. This was Tony's final season in 2001. And all of us are on the warning track at Qualcomm Stadium. They got these metal bike racks keeping the players and fans, behind a barrier. And as Tony is walking down the right field line and just going by the visiting bullpen towards where we were standing, the crowd began to rush, to the front. And me and three of my youth ball teammates were getting, pushed up against this metal barrier, these metal bike racks. And we're like 7 or 8 years old. Well, I mean, if it's 2001, so that would have made me 7 years old. And when Tony shows up, he literally looks at all the kids who are along the front rail, and Tony literally goes like this, says, "All right, folks, listen up." Like he went right into his coaching mode right there on this particular day. "Listen up. I have a whole row of Little League kids in front of me here. And if you folks don't stop pushing these kids, I'm going back in the club." That was Tony Gwynn. You don't really find a lot of guys nowadays who are really in it for the fan base. And randomly meeting Bill Walton at this basketball game that I went to outdoors at Petco, and him signing my ticket. I think he signed it with the year he won the title, his Hall of Fame. And chatting with him for even a minute was just so cool. Because of what Bill has meant to this town. Professionally, I have got to introduce Bill Walton at numerous Gulls games in the past when he has come out to honor the 50th anniversary of a sports arena opening for business. Again, Bill played there during his time in high school. They had the CIF title games there for the San Diego section. Professionally, of course, he came and played either with Portland or with the Celtics, or even, of course, with the Clippers when they were still in San Diego. And that Bill Walton just loved his hometown, and also, before we segue here to get to our next topics, though, is I remember, though, when I first got to work at the University of San Diego, I got a call day of our game against number 2 ranked Gonzaga. Ruri Hachimura's junior year, I believe, maybe senior year. And Dave Fash and Bill Walton were on the call for this game. I didn't get a chance, though, to talk to Bill because I was running late because I was coming from a prior event over at Point Loma Nazarene. But literally, when Bill Walton walks into the Jenny Craig Pavilion to go sit at the TV table across from where I sit at the PA table, at the scores table, it was a thunderous ovation for a guy who didn't play at the university, but meant so much to this town. There's also a very famous story in USD basketball lore when La Jolla Marymount University played USD at the old gym, which is the USD Sports Center. It may have held 1,000 people, if that. But back then when LMU had Paul Westhead, and Hank Gathers on their roster, that game with LMU was to the point where nobody got in. Even Mr. San Diego basketball, Bill Walton, denied entrance because it was a fire marshal hazard of how many people packed the gym to watch the Toreros play LMU, because Hank Gathers was on that team. Paul Westhead, I believe, what Bill Walton meant to this town in so many different capacities. But again, folks, very sad day for the basketball community, for that matter, the Portland Trail Blazers, the Boston Celtics, but more than anything else, a major loss, though, for San Diego sports. Again, the passing of Bill Walton after a very sudden, shocking announcement of his passing in the form of cancer. at the age of 71. Again, Bill and the accolades playing in the NBA, college basketball, but also what he meant, though, to so many people, on the media side, though, with his on-air demeanor that, again, I don't think can be matched, though, by having that much fun, good, bad, or ugly, or indifferent about what Bill Walton did, though, folks, on his broadcasts. So fun, and Bill Walton will be missed by all of us in the basketball community, and also missed, of course, here in San Diego, California. Again, shouting out the aforementioned David Furker, my go-to man, who says, my guy Callan is on Twitch with a nice Ric Flair woo to go along with it. And also a shout out as well to our good man, Jack Braun, joining us as well this afternoon. Jack, is always my man. Greatly appreciate you for tuning in here today. All right, folks, into the main topics of our show today. But over 2,300 players from the Baseball Negro Leagues, including Josh Gibson, Oscar Charleston, Satchel Paige, and Mule Suttles, have now officially, as of Wednesday, are now officially incorporated into the Major League Baseball record books. The project, led by famous and famed MLB official historian John Thorne, involved examining stats from seven Negro Leagues across the USA between the years of 1920 and 1948. John does confirm that nearly 75% of all available records are now included, with additional research potentially leading to more changes to the Major League leaderboards. Gibson became the Major League's career leader with a .372 batting average, surpassing Tiger legend Ty Cobb's .367. But the incorporation, though, of Negro League stats also changed the numbers of players known more for their Major League careers. The changes, though, also come as the Major Leagues are experiencing a decline and dip in black players, with black or African-American players representing only 6.2% of players on opening day rosters in 2023, down a full percentage point in 2022. Coming up on June 20th, the Cardinals and Giants will be playing a game in tribute to the Negro Leagues in Mobile, Alabama on June 20th. And also the inclusion of the Negro League stats is also seen as an honor for players who had never had the chance to have that recognition or play in Major League Baseball. Long overdue. Because I believe, folks, that there was a great point brought up on a radio show I was watching here in San Diego by Ben Higgins on KWFN 97.3 The Fan. Here, folks, we already incorporate and mesh together American League team and National League team stats under one umbrella with Major League Baseball. This, I believe, is the best thing that this league could have done for the fact of where the game was at. Now, I know that this might be totally eradicating and erasing Negro League history from their own record books. But I think, though, that the final bullet point is so true, though. The inclusion of this era of the game is being an honor for players who never got the chance to actually do this in Major League Baseball with where we were at the time with race relations. And certainly I do think, though, that this is what I think makes baseball beautiful, but also I think really helps tell the story of the game of baseball. I have said, folks, for a long time, and probably on this show and maybe on other programs on C2C, when you go to the Hall of Fame for a sport, for example, let's take the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. The Hall of Fame, in my opinion, has to tell the full story of your sports league. That is the good history. That is the bad history about how black players were barred from playing in Major League Baseball until Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier with the Brooklyn Dodgers. It also has to tell the ugly side of it. The steroid era. The Astros cheating scandal in 2017. Pete Rose. Shoeless Joe Jackson and 8 men out. You have to tell your whole story. And if this is the National Baseball Hall of Fame, you have to include the Negro Leagues. You already include when the women took over playing for the men during the wartime. That's already a part of the Hall of Fame as well. Now, I know that the Negro League Hall of Fame is in Kansas City, Missouri, and I've heard a lot of great stories from friends of mine who say you absolutely have to go if you ever go to Kansas City. But this is certainly long overdue that now Major League Baseball can recognize these players who were household names in these particular Negro leagues. Now they kind of get their due diligence. I know it's years after they have passed or what have you, but it certainly is about the last bullet point. And I think this also sparks a very, I think, good debate. What would have it been like though if Josh Gibson could have faced, some big name pitcher back in those days? Now, I'm sure that there'll be plenty of people who will rail against this for whatever reason that it will be or that they have. But the third and second to last bullet points are also very valid. The decrease and decline right now in Black and African American players is a little bit staggering. But also, I love, though, that Major League Baseball is going to be doing this game, though, with the Cardinals and Giants playing this game in Alabama, where I believe Willie Mays got his start in the Negro Leagues. Now, also, you look at that. Now you can factor in, like, really, if you want to do a whole career capsule of Willie Mays, now, as of Wednesday, you now can look at what he did in the Negro Leagues on top of his time with the New York and San Francisco Giants. And even further, this adds more to Jackie Robinson's legacy, his time in the Negro Leagues before he got signed by the Brooklyn Dodgers. And I think you also do wonder eventually, do other professional leagues now do this? Where I know I talk a lot about the days of when it was the ABA versus the NBA, the AFL versus the NFL, the NHL versus the WHA. Now, does this kind of, in a way, begin to start that conversation with the other professional North American sports leagues? Could we now maybe add in Gordie Howe's time playing with the Houston Aeros in the in the WHA, or Andre Lacroix's time playing with the San Diego Mariners from the WHA, or the original Winnipeg Jets or the Hartford Whalers? Look at what Dr. J did in the ABA. Does all that now get taken into consideration now that we've seen a league now recognize a different league, and now we have this sort of thing happening? Now, I know it might be a little bit different, though, if, like, say, ABA, NBA, because now, well, hey, you're factoring in that Dr. J and those guys had the three-point shot before the NBA really adapted or adopted the rule. But mainly, I think this is a great way, though, for baseball to, again, tell the full story of this game that has been dubbed America's national pastime. From a simple fact now that some very great and notable names. I think everybody out there who's a baseball fan knows about Satchel Paige. But now they get their due diligence in a way to now be included in the Major League record books. Now, again, I know that you could probably say, well, it's two different things. Like, it's two different things. They have their own Hall of Fame as is. But if we are talking about the game of baseball as a whole, like I pointed out here earlier, in this segment here, again, Ben Higgins on the morning show here in San Diego said we already do this as is, though, when we have American League and National League combined underneath the Major League Baseball umbrella when it boils down to how we read the stats on the website or on the app or in the box scores. So what's so wrong practically with adding in, Negro leagues and adding in these players who, again, were not given the right or the chance or opportunity to do this in Major League Baseball because of where the state of affairs was at the time in America. And again, I think it just adds a little bit more of a layer, I think, to really talk about how great Willie Mays was as a player or how great Jackie Robinson was. Because now you are combining their whole entire career now in a full retrospective capsule from the Negro Leagues into Major League Baseball. But again, folks, effective as of Wednesday, over 2,300 players from the Negro Leagues of America, including Josh Gibson, Oscar Charleston, Satchel Paige, and also Mewell Suttles, have been incorporated finally into the Major League Baseball record books. This project being led by Major League Baseball's official historian and author, John Thorne, involved examining stats from 7 different leagues between 1920 to 1948. And nearly 75% or 3/4 of the research or available records have been included, with more research coming, potentially leading to more changes to the Major League leaderboards, which now makes Josh Gibson, a power-hitting and great catcher for the Homestead Grays, the official Major League career leader in batting average with a 372 career clip, surpassing Tiger great Ty Cobb, who hit 367. Also, this is mainly in wake right now of the change coming as the major leagues are also seeing a bit of a dip and decline right now in black players, a full 1% drop from 2022 to last season, and also the Cardinals and Giants are going to be playing a game in tribute to the Negro Leagues coming up on June 20th down in Alabama. But mainly, I am more in agreement here about the inclusion of this happening to, again, give these names who were not household names at the time, except in the markets that they played in, their recognition in Major League Baseball. Because I think that is the only fair way to go about this, is what would have happened if Josh Gibson would have had to face Bob Feller, for example, in 1948 or 49 with the Indians, for example. So folks, am totally in for this. I know that we can probably go a bunch of different ways about, well, the leagues didn't last very long or so on and so forth. But again, if we're looking at this still, folks, from a grand spectrum or a grand view, the broad picture, for example, of the game of baseball, this has to include the Negro Leagues. Because like I said, though, if you are trying to tell the story of baseball, for example, at the Hall of Fame, it has to include the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like I said, the good, all the good stuff is good. But what about the bad side of where black players were excluded from Major League Baseball and they had to form their own leagues because of where, the race, where race was at in that time frame? And the ugly truth about the game: sign stealing with the Astros, PEDs, steroids, all this other stuff, though, that you have to tell the game and tell the history and the story of your sport. Good side, bad side, ugly side. It's a part of history. And I think adding in the Negro League history into Major League Baseball is amazing. I think it is an absolutely amazing thing, because now these players who never got their recognition because, well, you played in the Negro Leagues, you weren't in Major League Baseball, like it doesn't count practically. Now we all can look at these guys and look at their careers and really think about maybe like what would have happened maybe if Satchel Paige had to face somebody, or Josh Gibson, or Oscar Charleston. So again, I think, though, good on Major League Baseball in wake of this happening. Again, folks, the Negro Leagues are officially going to be incorporated finally into Major League Baseball leaderboards. And again, such a huge inclusion to have the Negro Leagues added in to, for again, like the badge of honor to now give these players their due diligence. Let's, folks, move away now to the Professional Women's Hockey League, coming off of a widely successful first season on Wednesday with their team in Minnesota, shutting out Boston 3-0 in Game 5 to win the inaugural Walter Cup Championship. The league this year drew an average of 5,448 fans per game during the course of their regular season. The league also set multiple records this year for the most attended women's hockey game, culminating in a draw of 21,105 people in Montreal back on April 20th. The league is backed by Dodgers lead owner Mark Walter and tennis superstar and legend Billie Jean King as an investor and advisor. However, after one great year, now there are some critical to-dos in year 2. The first one, of course, is team branding. The lack of team nicknames adds to the initial fan focus on the league name. Media rights is also a big thing. The league plans to expand its U.S. broadcast reach beyond an existing deal with the Women's Sports Network, and also some issues in New York. The league's franchise in New York averaged a league worst 2,496 fans, complicating efforts to develop a local fan base. They also, by the way, were playing in 3 different arenas over the course of a season. And of course, league expansion, as I said here a while back. The league is right now focusing on further testing of candidate cities with neutral site games, and a measure already used by the league in both Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Detroit, Michigan. I know Brandon made the joke in our group chat, and I think he said it here too when we talked about the PWHL here on Sports Minute, that this will be a team that wins a championship before the Wolves and the Vikings and Twins and the Loons. Brandon, you were right, my man, with Minnesota winning it on Wednesday. Again, folks, I said here last time on Press Row, it is very hard, in my opinion, for any women's sports naysayers to not find a way to not now change their tune, which I think that you can, and get behind women's sports. The PWHL folks, smashing success this year. I mean, every other week they were putting out something about, hey, this crowd is most, like most in a game. This was like an every week occurrence. And I am so glad and so happy and thrilled for these players to see this come to fruition. But also it's because, like I said here, when we talked about the WNBA going to Toronto next season, it's because for once, women's sports has billionaire owners backing their product. Mark Walter, lead owner of the Dodgers, Stan Kasten, best known for his time with the Braves and also now with the Dodgers. And, of course, you got Billie Jean King, one of the greatest tennis players, if not the greatest women's tennis player of all time. So, of course, now we look ahead now to year 2. But I want to, though, round of applause. Clap it up here for the PWHL for a just smashing first-year success. I'm mainly happy for all the players who I know in the league, like Haley Skamura and Hilary Knight and Megan Keller and Kendall Coyne-Schofield and, Nicole Hensley, Marie-Philippe Poulin, Sarah Nurse, so many of the notable names in women's hockey who play with Team USA or Canada or other leagues or countries in general, who, folks, for so long, we have only known them in the Olympics. But we never knew them, though, outside of an Olympic year for women's hockey. But now, though, with a full season now in the books, and now the exposure of these players now finally coming to limelight is only going to help this sport and help women's hockey grow. In perspective, Amanda Kessel has already said that she will declare for next year's draft. Some other players who maybe were on the fence about playing in this new league, they now are fully on board. So let's talk about the checklist for year 2. Certainly team branding. The only reason why is because this is a pretty good segue that we, as we know, have a new franchise starting up in Salt Lake City, Utah in the 24-25 NHL season, the former Arizona Coyotes. They will play next season with no name until the 25-26 NHL season. And certainly you want to have a brand attached to these teams. Now, I think I did see a couple of lists that came out for some of the names for the franchises in these markets. They all were very iffy. I saw a lot of pushback and blowback and backlash towards some of the names that were listed. But certainly, you got to get team branding right. Media rights is another big talking point for me. Now, thankfully, Bally Sports West and San Diego had the rights in the States to show games with Minnesota and Boston and really show the league in its entirety. And I know that Bally has their issues that I'm not going to further dive into. But now I think you want to kind of go a little bit bigger. So do you talk to CBS Sports? Do you talk to ESPN? Do you talk to NHL Network? So certainly growing your reach will be huge for television viewership. Having the games though on YouTube, convenient. I tune in to watch a good majority of Boston games because I'm a big fan of Hillary Knight. I watched Ottawa a lot, having known and got to interview Haley Skamura, but also would watch though just to kind of see like some of the new kids on the block, like Taylor Heisey, who was #1 overall pick, fresh off of winning a college national title. Then she's drafted #1 overall by Minnesota. They win the championship. So also like some of the new faces coming into the sport, though, who may in fact be with Canada or Team USA come the Winter Games in 2026. So certainly media reach will be huge. The third one will be the New York team. My only reason why I think it's a bit of a concern, though, is that it's a major media mogul, #1 media market in the country. But I do, though, give a little, like some small blame on the New York franchise. Reason being, you had no consistent home arena. You were playing one day in Jersey, then you were playing in at UBS Arena in New York where the Islanders play. Then you may have played at the Garden where the Rangers play. You know, you went to so many different arenas. I'm sure it got difficult for fans to keep up with where you were playing games. So I'm not as concerned with New York, but I do believe though that the league needs to just give them one permanent home rink. You know, you can't keep bouncing around, though, from UBS to MSG to college venues around town or go to Prudential Center in New Jersey. That's my only sticking point here is keep it at one building. And obviously, league expansion. You know, that was one of my main gripes when the league was announced, though, is that, well, this is cool, but for me, it's not accessible because I can't literally take the train up to Orange County or LA or go with friends who want to go support women's sports because you're playing in Midwest and in Northeast towns and cities. Now, I think the league, though, folks, did this the right way, though, by having neutral ground games at PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh and at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. I think they played games, too, at TD Garden in Boston. That, again, that's cool and all. But again, though, I still, though, will kind of be a little bit on that soapbox. If you want the league to grow, you have to go to more markets. Now, I know that you could be concerned, though, about like WNBA 2.0 of growing the league too quickly and then these teams shut down after 3 years, you know. However, though, that is my main sticking point. Is that, you know, this is great. You know, I fully am behind the league. But once more, is that you cannot only cater to these markets in regards to just the northeast of the U.S. and Canada and then Minnesota, who won the championship. And like I said on here, too, I think, for the fact that Mark Walter and Stan Kasten, who are part of the Dodger ownership group, and Mark Walter has his name on this championship trophy, you can't tell me that there's not going to be a team in Los Angeles or in Southern California in the first round of expansion. Or Seattle, with how the Kraken have really begun to do things the right way with women's hockey. Or even Arizona, believe it or not, because of how that the Kachinas have been very well run with girls hockey. So my main only critical offseason to-do listing will be to add a Western division. And I think that would work. You could easily, I think, find 6 Western-based cities to form, just like what the NHL did in 67. They added 6 teams to a new division. This could easily, I think, be done. Now, of course, you would have to get people on board with ownership. But I think you already have one market locked down in Los Angeles with Mark Walter and Stan Kasten and Guggenheim Baseball Partners, who will probably, I believe, become the ownership group of the PWHL LA franchise. Hell, call them the LA Royals. Why not? You have the Kings. Why not call them the Royals? I think you could probably easily make this work with 6 Western-based markets. A market or two markets in Southern California, maybe a market up in Northern California, like in Oakland or San Jose or San Francisco, Seattle, maybe Vegas, maybe Arizona, maybe Denver. But I believe, though, that expansion is my main sticking point with the PWHL. I'm not really concerned about the New York franchise. I'm really not, because I think, though, that though I know that the numbers are not good with the average attendance, though, they had 3 or 4 home arenas at their disposal. I mainly think they were trying to find the proper home for them. And I'm also all in favor of this league going to neutral cities to test the markets. But again, I would think, though, you would have to start doing it, though, in markets like Anaheim, Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Jose, Phoenix, Tempe, Seattle, Portland, Oregon, maybe even, for example, Salt Lake City, with them getting involved with the NHL. But either way, folks, I'm thoroughly invested in the PWHL. And just what a great way for them to really break through, to give hockey fans and people who want to support women's hockey and women's sports a phenomenal, great first season. A really great, successful first season. But certainly there are some critical things coming up, but I don't think that they're as critical as they're being portrayed. Branding will be fine. Media rights, I think that will be fine. New York, I could see why it's a concern, though. Just you have to find a consistent home arena. But expansion will be my main sticking point. And the reason why it's such a big sticking point, in my opinion, is that there is fan bases who have supported women's hockey when Team USA has played Canada at 3 games in Southern California, 4 games in its entirety, maybe 5. I was at 2 games. I was at one in Anaheim and one in Los Angeles, one of which is in the top 3 of home attendance for Team USA on the women's hockey side, with over 13,000 people. Same goes for Los Angeles, and same goes for Seattle, and even in Arizona. So I think you could easily, make this league go to 12 teams, and you could play this out like it's 1967 NHL hockey. You have your East Division, or your original 6, then you have your next 6. So when it comes to critical level on the PWHL to-do list for the offseason, expansion, figuring out the New York situation, media rights, and branding. I just think, though, with how the sport of hockey has grown out here, as I say a lot, that I really believe that LA or Orange County would get behind a team. Again, having seen it twice firsthand, with the amount of youth hockey teams who went to games in Anaheim or in Los Angeles, and then when Seattle hosted Team USA, that there is opportunity out here. And I really believe, though, that with Mark Walter and Stan Kasten having hands in this league, do not be surprised that the first team who's added is going to be LA or somewhere in Southern California. But again, folks, great first year for the PWHL that wrapped up on Wednesday with the Minnesota team defeating Boston 3-0 to win the first ever Walter Cup championship. In the league, drew an average of 5,448 fans during the regular season and set multiple records of attendance records, including a crowd of over 21,000 people in Montreal. 21,000 people supporting women's hockey. Incredible. With that in mind, folks, we will now shift gears to prize money. We are just about roughly 2 months away from the Summer Games in 2024 up in Paris, France. And the International Olympic Committee did not support the decision originally of the World Athletics to announce plans back in April to distribute out Olympic prize money, marking a shift from amateurism in the Olympics. But now, folks, the International Boxing Association, or the IBA, announced its plans to award $3.1 million in prize money to boxers who reached the Paris qualifiers, plus compensation for their coaches and national federations. The IOC, though, is still against any sport governing body paying Olympic athletes, but the IBA is particularly a thorn in its side. They have also criticized senior IBA leadership for its funding measures and the integrity of judges and competitions that spanned from the 2016 Games in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The IOC has also already announced intentions of a new governing body that would need to be established by early 2025 to avoid risking the sport being dropped from the 2028 Summer Olympics program in Los Angeles, California. Folks, we know that boxing is probably, arguably, the most corrupt sport other than FIFA in international soccer. But now, as we sit, folks, about 2 months away from the games in Paris, it is just baffling to me to actually think that we could potentially have the Olympic Games not include boxing or wrestling for a while there. Could you imagine the two, I think, most iconic, notable, and longest surviving Olympic game events dating back to the gladiator ages of Rome not being a part of the Olympic Games like boxing and wrestling? Could you imagine that not being a thing? But folks, we know about corruption in boxing. It's no secret. But also that the IBA has been kind of on the blacklist and getting blackballed by the IOC for what happened during the course of the 2016 Summer Games in Rio de Janeiro. But one, I think, also wonders, though, because of the rise of MMA and UFC, one begins to wonder even if boxing is even still a relevant sport, not just for the Olympics, but kind of in the sports ecosystem right now in 2024. And frankly, I don't know if it is. Because we had the snafu with Ryan Garcia just about a couple of weeks ago. You know, he floors Devin Haney a couple times, wins the fight, but then, though, he has a couple of tainted drug samples. Talks of him being drunk during the course of the weigh-in and during the fight itself. You know, he was a party boy for the whole time leading up to weigh-ins, and he came in overweight and won the match because he was overweight and partially buzzed and probably hammered. You know, that whole story reminded me so much of the 30 for 30 I watched about Roberto Duran saying no mas against Sugar Ray Leonard. You know, it was about the cramping. It was about the fatigue from celebrating. It was all these lame, pitiful excuses. And the fact that Sugar Ray has to fly down to Panama to get an answer out of Roberto Duran, and he lives by his story, and how long it took Sugar Ray to finally drop that, his, animosity. I just don't know if there's really a place right now for boxing in the sports ecosystem, let alone in the, even in the Olympics. Because I sadly think that a lot of fans that love boxing have been turned off by the Paul brothers. I really honestly do. Now, I'm going to give some props, though, to Jake and Logan for really, I think, helping female boxing recently. As it's gone by. But I also, though, stumbled across something called the Team Combat League, which is a boxing promotion, but it's a team-based product. It's teams based in San Antonio, in LA, and I believe Vegas and Boston. And these teams travel around the country to, gyms and to ballrooms and arenas. And this is a actually sanctioned boxing league. I follow a few of the fighters in Maricela Conejo and also Amelia Round, I believe, or Amelia Moore, who's in this league. They box for either the LA team or the Boston team. But it just, though, folks, feels like, though, that the sport of boxing has just been dying a slow death for a long time, post Tyson and Lennox Lewis in the 90s. And like when they had the runs, though, of Foreman and Ali and Frazier. but also that Olympic boxing, I think, is really, I think, taking a major hit. And I don't know if it's for the fact of just like the talent pool is shallow. I mean, we had a lot of great, boxers come through Team USA over the course of the last several games, men's and women's. I think of Michaela Mayer and, Clarissa Shields and Queen Underwood. And those three stick out in my mind, or even, Marlene Esparza. So that'd be four. But I just don't know, though, folks, if people are really buying into boxing in both the Olympics or even nowadays, even on DAZN. I know Canelo has his contract with, De La Hoya and Golden Boy Productions, and Top Rank has some great talent. But I just don't know, though, if boxing is going to be surviving. And I hope I'm wrong, though, because just, again, imagining a Summer Olympics in Paris this upcoming year, in LA in 2 years, or in Brisbane in 2032 down in Australia, just imagining boxing not being a part of the Olympic Games, like one of the staple pillars of the Olympic Games in its entirety, dating back to the Stone Ages in ancient Rome. Those two, boxing or wrestling not being a part of the Olympics is just weird, or would be just weird in general. But again, I think, though, with the fact of money now being involved, though, and the IOC is trying to, again, put up this line, you can't do this. And also that the IOC says, we already had problems with the IBA already in 2016. Stay away from this. We don't want you here. Go away. But also, I think, though, it is a bit of a domino effect. Track and field, World Athletics is trying to distribute prize money. But again, the IOC said, hard stop, you can't do this. I think the only reason why I think that there will not be prize money for boxing is because of the second to last bullet point, which is bullet point 5. The IOC is already right now having issues with the IBA dating back to how much of a dumpster fire the judging was during the Summer Games in Rio de Janeiro in 2016. But also, by early 2025, a whole new governing body for boxing has to be established so that it will not be dropped off of the program in LA in 2028. Again, just imagine, folks, if boxing is not even in Los Angeles. So many notable boxers, mainly Oscar De La Hoya and Sinisa Estrada, two homegrown LA products who could not go there to represent, their production or just be there as like a goodwill ambassador for the sport. And boxing not being in LA, and again, not even being involved with the Olympic program in its entirety in general, is mind-boggling. But it boils down, though, folks, to money. But I also do think, though, that part of it, though, is what I said earlier, is that I think, though, with the popularity of UFC overtaking boxing, like, does MMA become a sport in the Olympics? I doubt it, because I don't think Dana White would want to have that. But I also wonder if you start looking at different avenues of combat sports to take over for boxing. I know there is a quite a few Muay Thai fighters in town who I follow on the web, notably Selena Flores, who has been on a absolute roll in a SoCal production called WCK Full Rules Muay Thai. Selena just won another belt back on my birthday, May 18th, here at a local casino. And she's just been dominating her sport here recently. And there have been calls, though, from her in the Muay Thai community to make that a Olympic sport. Because really all you have to showcase yourself is a lot of local products or a lot of local programs or fight cards locally. Or you have to go all the way to Thailand to fight over there with their national sport at their national Muay Thai arena and stadium. Could Muay Thai eventually get into the program? I think it'd be great to give it more exposure because of how much boxing is fading. Not just Olympically, folks, but also fading kind of in a way right now across TV and across major fight cards. Where again, if you have a major fight card, it's a freaking sham and a little bit tainted because of Ryan Garcia and his antics leading up to his fight with Devin Haney 3 or 4 weeks ago. And how it's now has boiled down to 2 failed drug tests by Ryan Garcia for a substance of some type. Then the baggage of Ryan Garcia being a party boy all week, getting drunk every night, being up till 5 a.m., and coming into the weigh-in bloated and overweight. I believe Devin Haney apologized, I think, or said something to that though. But I know that he was on SportsCenter 3 days after he lost, and he was very ticked off talking to Stan Verrett about him losing and about how that guy over there came in and basically cheated to win that match, being overweight, being drunk, and also having the substance issues. So again, folks, I don't really know how to feel about this. I think it would just be very weird if boxing got dropped off the Olympic program in 2028 in Los Angeles. But there's just too much controversy. And again, I don't think the IOC wants to have anything to do with the International Boxing Association. Where I believe you really have to, I think, sit down and really plan this out to form this new governing body to ensure that you can keep one of the original, Rome era, gladiator era sports on the program for the Olympic Games. Last topic, folks. Lawsuits continuing in college athletics. Florida's Attorney General filed a lawsuit against the ACC alleging it violated public record laws by refusing to produce documents related to the conference's new media deal. The lawsuit by Florida State University argues that the contracts binding the school to the conference for the next 10 years, including Florida State, pay about $500 million in exit fees, are right now unenforceable. The outcome of this lawsuit will not directly impact FSU's direct dispute with the ACC, but could set a new precedent in sports by allowing confidential media rights to be made public. The conference is claiming that FSU estimates of $500 million in exit fees was incorrect. As per the conference's bylaws, amounts to around $140 million. ESPN has not taken a public stance yet in the conference realignment dispute. But in a different briefing, the network asked that the judge side with the ACC in this particular lawsuit. The SEC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12 also filed similar briefs and motions supporting the ACC's position, citing the devastating competitive impact that disclosure would have on the market. The lawsuit is just one of 5 that could ultimately decide the fate of the ACC. College athletics, folks, will never get out of their own way as long as there is still this ongoing them versus you versus me mentality. This upcoming year, folks, really feels like a make or break year for the future of college athletics in so many different capacities. Realignment, media deals, the 12-team format now for the CFP for football. But also conferences trying to keep themselves together because of the realignment. USC, UCLA jumping from the Pac-12. Reports coming out that UCLA will have to fork out about $10 million, if not more, to Cal Berkeley because of them leaving the conference for the Big Ten. But this is troubling. It just, though, adds another layer of malaise to this now somewhat off-season of college athletics, even though that we have the Women's College World Series and the Baseball World Series going on right now at this juncture of the sports calendar here in late May going into June. Florida State, you should be happy because you're adding in Cal and Stanford into your conference. And that you are also going to be getting more money from the Northern California media market for your conference. Unlike the Pac-12 here, folks, the ACC network still will exist. Pac-12 networks are officially dormant and I believe now off the air. And a lot of great people I know in the industry have lost their jobs at that network because it's no longer a thing. But I really would like to see all of these lawsuits figured out and put to bed before we kick off the new school year for athletics in August. And I know that is a very, easy thing to say, or it's very wishful thinking because of how college athletics operates and works. But folks, if more of his stuff keeps leaking over and keeps leaking, and it becomes a full-fledged water main break, college athletics is going to keep on suffering. The realignment carousel, folks, was only the starter for me. And now we have lawsuits about NIL deals, as we talked about here on Press Row last show, involving the Florida quarterback who was screwed out of about $14 million of NIL, and he transferred to a couple different, programs. Where we're at right now as well with the media deals right now, again, the Pac-12 network is off the air for good. But all these lawsuits have to be resolved, I think, by the time the new school year starts. I mean, it is just not helping the cause right now to have this much garbage and junk flying around college athletics right now as we begin this very, uncharted territory of a season in 2024, 2025. I mean, the fact that Oregon State and Washington State, two of the most well-known Pac-12 schools, are now in the West Coast Conference for the next 2 years is kind of laughable because of the Pac-12 folding, because everybody jumped ship for more money for college football. I also do want to blame ESPN a little bit for actually siding with the conference in this lawsuit. You should have no say whatsoever with what happens. Just because that you are viewing this only from the football microscope or football set of eyes and not sports that I care about, which is not football, hand egg as I call it, ESPN needs to keep their nose out of this. Let the schools and the conferences sue each other. Let them get all bent out of shape. But if you're a media partner, keep your nose out of this. This does not involve you. Don't be the third man into the altercation and start more trouble. Let the ACC and Seminoles work this out. I know that you're seeing dollar signs and you're seeing cryptocurrency charts and you're seeing all the money flying in. No, this matter does not involve ESPN. This is only a matter involving the ACC and the Florida State University Seminoles. That is it. Now I get though that like that the SEC, the Big 10 and Big 12 are filing similar lawsuits. But again, if I'm a media partner, I'm staying out of this because this does not involve us directly. But folks, I really just hope though that we can get all of this malarkey figured out, straightened out, and put to bed by the time mid-August rolls around, when we have the first few games of like the college volleyball season and the college soccer season, and teams begin to work closer into game shape for the college football season. And again, I know that these lawsuits won't go away. I'm sure that we'll have more of this come out during the course of next school year because of, the efforts to form labor unions at USC and Dartmouth and this and that. And, someone else will be unhappy with their current conference and they'll sue to get out of it. I don't know, folks. I just want all of this crap and junk and gunk to be finally fully figured out and finally put into the ground and buried by the time we start fall sports in August. because this is not helping the ACC's case. This is not helping Florida State's case, and certainly not helping out any media partners' case. And it's also damaging and, it's damaging the NCAA's reputation and image more and more and more when more of this stuff comes out. So we'll see, folks, what happens with this lawsuit again. But at the end of the day, folks, I just want all this, and I think James and I agree, though. I just want all this stuff figured out by the time we start the next school year. When we really, I think, really embark on this new uncharted territory of a journey of literally, no Pac-12 being around, all the carousel of movement, of the carousel of progress, of realignment. I just want 1 year where there is nothing that happens like this. But I know that's asking for way too much, but it's just very, very tiresome talking about this sort of stuff, though, involving college athletics. With that, folks, in mind, we're going to drop a bit of a tease, but we do, folks, have some updates involving Puck and Roll, our brand new podcast covering the San Diego-based Elite Draft League, coming up this June. So, folks, real quickly here about the league. This past Saturday, May 25th, I was at tryouts at the Escondido Sports Center. Amazing turnout for the league. We had over 60 players try out on Saturday for our 4-team league that will play a 10-game season. Great to see some great see some friends of mine who I actually got to announce for about 14, 15 years ago. Drake DeBerry, Ray and Reed Kinsey, Anthony Mata, some of the guys who I saw who played for the Junior Gulls when I was their announcer back in my early days of my career. But again, great turnout. Great to see, kind of get a feel for the rink at Kit Carson Park at the Escondido Sports Center. Great to meet the entire front office of Gabe and, of course, Josh Fontaine, the league president and league founder, and getting acquainted with all the guys. We actually had the draft after tryouts on Saturday night over some amazing tacos and beer from our proud partner, Craft Coast Brewery, and tacos up in San Marcos. So, folks, here is where we are at right now with Puck and Roll coming to Coast to Coast. Folks, after tryouts wrapped up on Saturday, I pre-recorded an audio interview with EDL founder and president and commissioner Josh Fontaine. That, folks, will officially air in audio form here on Coast to Coast via a bit of a teaser, a bit of a audio or a video presentation as well. But, folks, that will air officially on Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific time here on Coast to Coast. We will also, folks, have the audio portion of this podcast, an interview, I should say, 42 on Mixcloud, which is kind of like SoundCloud. It's called Mixcloud. It's more used for radio hosts and stuff like that. Now, into the nitty-gritty, folks. Our first live show here on C2C will come your way more than likely right now, June 21st. That might change, though, because that is our official day for right now, having a dry run of opening night operations at the arena. We could also probably do a remote broadcast live from Craft Coast up in San Marcos. Then, folks, we jump into game time and gameplay on June 22nd. We will have our first official recap show on June 23rd. We'll be having some segments sponsored by some of our league partners and plenty of good stuff coming your way, too, via social channels. Our 4 teams, folks, will play a 10-game season, and all 4 teams will make the postseason, and the season will run until late September. But, folks, we are super excited. I, again, went up there, talked to Josh, talked to the guys. They are beyond ecstatic for what we have planned right now with the season coming up here. Again, they're stoked to get the year started, but also again, though, folks, very proud, though, of the turnout that we had, though, of roughly 60-plus players and more guys who are on the list but cannot make it out, though, because of, family commitments or Memorial Weekend or whatnot. Those 60 players came out. They all were drafted hours after we wrapped up tryouts. They all have their teams. The schedule's been put out effective today. So, again, folks, keep an eye out for that, though, tomorrow on Friday. Again, we'll have an audio interview pre-recorded from tryouts on Saturday with, again, EDL founder Josh Fontaine. That will come your way, folks, in audio form here on Coast to Coast and via Mixcloud at 1 o'clock Pacific time. And then from there, we will again have our first 2 live shows. Right now, again, scheduled for the first show on June 21st and eventually June 23rd, following our first day of gameplay for the EDL here in San Diego. With that, folks, in mind, a great turnout today on the program. Again, a major thank you to David Furker and Jack Braun for joining us here today, folks. We will see you back here again for our next program on Friday with Entertainment Hour, folks. Again, as we said, though, last week or a couple weeks ago about Adam Barber and his wife. Again, we will, folks, keep you updated about kicking it for tonight on Thursday. We probably will not have the program. Regardless, folks, we thank you again for joining us here. This has been Press Row here on Coast to Coast Entertainment. We'll see you folks back here for our next program on Press Row in early June. Until then, folks, have a good one. Till then,